This is the third time I've done this. Um, I'm doing it differently because, of course, I forgot my Latin text. It's at school, and for some reason, I don't have a blank copy of the Latin here. So here are the markups, which gives you guys a bit of a head up if you did your markups or if you're paying attention to it. We stopped on line 510. Nope. 511. So we stopped on 511, and what we see is Priam, who is surrounded, or is King Gitor. He is girding himself. Such a weird word, gird. It means to arm. So he arms himself with the inutile ferrum, with the useless iron from the shoulders. This is because Romans and Greeks would have had a buckler, like I don't know what it was called. It's a buckler. What I don't know. It goes cross body, and the sword would be on the right hand side. They would have had like a sword belt too, but there would have been something that went across the body to hold, more stuff. So he's putting on his old weapons. And of course, Vergil's doing a lot of foreshadowing here with the inulte, with the trementibus iwo. He's trembling with old age. It's useless weapons. He's a senior, he's an old man. Remember, all the young men are dead at this point, really, for the most part. They're left only with the very young children and the women. Okay. But he's a man. And he is, doing what he can to protect his family. It is interesting to see the enjambment here with the Kirkumdat and the Kingitor. Both, again, look at the alliteration of the Kirkumdat Kingitor. In this way, it kind of sounds like the shing of a blade, sort of the kink of a blade going into its sheath. Okay, I may be stretching a little bit, but there's a sound there that is being repeated. All right. Um, and of course, he carries and about to die. Okay, look at that again. More um, um, foreshadowing on Vergil's part with this Moriturus. He's just laying it on thick because, of course, that's your future participle. Almost said adjective. It is an adjective, but whatever. It's a future participle. And about to die. Okay, he's going to go into the densest, into the thick enemy. And Priam is standing up for his family. He is the last man standing, literally, and he is going to go in. Okay. Now we're going to see the opposite of that in these next couple lines. So we've seen Priam's reaction. The Greeks are beating down the doors, the toppling their towers. Everything has gone to heck in a handbasket. Now let's take a look at what the other people, and of course, Priam's not alone, right? Even though he might be the only man left. I think he's the only old man there. There are women. Okay. Most notably, of course, is Hecuba, his wife. And we kind of need to see this, where this is going. So let's see if I can draw this text box here. I don't know. We're gonna start typing. All right. So idibus and medibus. And you're gonna see all these ablatives together and be like, what, Miss Campbell? How do you know all of these are ablatives? Well, I know they're ablatives because I scanned my Latin and because I know my endings. These are two very important things that you really do need to know. So the idibus, ibus, is either dative or ablative. When I see the in next to it, I know it's a prepositional phrase. And when I see the metis after that, especially with the metis with the long is, I'm like, Vergil likes to split his prepositional phrases. I bet those two go together, and they do. We have the nudo que. Remember, the que is going to be dropped in front of that. Okay, and that sort of separates the nudo out. And then we have the sub itheris and the oxe. Now, how do I know that the nudo, the oxe go together, and the sub itheris go together? Well, first of all, the nudo and the oxe are singular, and the itheris is plural. Okay, so you can't add apples and oranges here. Singular to singular, plural to plural. Also, with the sub under the open air. And I also know that Vergil loves to split prepositional phrases and noun adjectives. So I'm like, oh, this checks all of Vergil's boxes. Makes it a little more complicated, but very poetic. Okay, so you kind of have to look at that. So we would start here in the middle. Oh, it's going to auto think for me. Well, this is going to be interesting. We're going to see how this goes. All right, um, in the middle, I guess we could say of the, it's really not in the, it's like in the middle of the home. So I'm going to go of the, oh, night. No, home. I should let autocorrect finish Vergil for me and see where it takes us. All right. And nudo oxe with, so it's an ablative. Remember, ablative's the needy friend case. It does have to have a preposition with it. And we've got the nudo and the oxe together. Nudo here does not mean like, we probably get the word nude from it, but what it means is open or lying sort of bare. Um, and the eye that there is no, there's no roof here. All right, so in the open oxe, in the open arch, under sub aetheris, under the atmosphere. So um with the open arch under the whoops, under the, it's plural, under the airs. And what this is saying is in the middle of the home, there's this huge open space. And it would have been kind of like the Roman garden, the peristylium, where they had that sort of colonnade, and then there was an open space with a garden. Very similar to that. So the palace itself would have had this open space in it. And in the middle of the home, in the most sacred part of the home, and this goes way back. So, if you think about it, focus comes from the Latin focus, meaning hearth or fireplace. And originally, Roman homes were round huts, and the focus or the center part of the home was the hearth, was the fire pit. Many cultures have had this idea of a round home where the focus is the center point, is the fire, is where you got nourished, it's where you stayed warm, it's where you got light, it's where you came together as a family. And this is the most sacred spot for Priam and for his family. And it was open to the heirs because, of course, they would have burned offerings to the gods. And even the Greeks knew that smoking meat in the house was a mess. So they would have had, an open sort of roof area to help disperse some of the smoke. So in this sacred center of the home, Ingens ara fuit, there was a huge altar. Okay, this would have been massive. It was the palatial representation of all of Troy. Okay, this was all of Priam's ancestors. This was all their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations. This was I mean, it's not like the Greeks were conquering, some pitty little city state somewhere. They were conquering an empire. And at the heart of the empire was this altar, and they're about to just desecrate it. Okay. So Vergil's building it up for us to sort of understand. He's already foreshadowed the death of Priam. We know that's coming. And now he's building up the next sort of level of like, oh my gosh, they wouldn't, and then of course they do. Care. So there was a huge altar, and uxta here means next to it. Next to, oh, nope. Next to it. Was a veterima loris. Now, this is kind of a pain in the butt because many of you are probably looking at this going, well, Miss Campbell, this doesn't make any sense at all. What is veterima going with? You say the quay breaks things up, but veterima is obviously feminine and loris is actually masculine, except it's not sexually feminine. So loris here is actually a third declension feminine noun, which is super irritating. But it's a tree, and most trees are feminine. For whatever wackadoodle reason, trees are just generally feminine. So the fact that this is a laurel tree, sorry. So next to it, you can almost put was again. Was in ancient. Oh God, ancient. I noticed that the autocorrect has stopped. It's like we don't know where you're going. There was an ancient laurel tree. So that gets you here. That's the Veterina loris. So in the middle, medius aedibus, in the middle of the home, and with the nudo oxe, with the open arch, sub aetheris, under the sky's airs, there was fuit ingens ara, a huge altar. And next to the altar, Veterima loris was an ancient. And I guess I gotta call it not just ancient, it's a most, look at that superlative, a most ancient laurel tree. I don't know how old laurel trees go. I think the oldest living olive tree in Greece is pushing 1,000. And they knew that. These are these massive, venerated, gnarled, just really awesome looking trees. If you have a chance, Google it. It's impressive. Okay. They are the old olive trees are just really, really impressive. If you come to Greece with me this summer, you'll see it. Eventually, some of you, all of you should travel and see them. Okay. Um, Laying in Kumbens. In Kumbens is modifying veteriment. That's a good question, actually. Uh, which words are modifying loris? Well, you've got veteriment and Kumbens, and that's a really tricky one because loris ends in a US, but it's feminine. Veterima ends in an A. That's easy, but incumbens is the nominative singular present active participle. That's a tough one. Laying, is that how you spell laying? We're going to go with it. Laying on the altar. And I think it's like next to it and laying, it's almost like the tree and the altar are one, like the tree's grown into the altar, or maybe they carved part of the altar out of the tree. Again, these are, if you've ever seen like the old trees, the circumference of these trunks is just massive. Okay, so the most ancient laurel tree laying on the altar, and it is complexa. It has complexa. It has embraced and having embraced the penates, the household gods with shade. All right, so it's such a massive tree that the household gods, the penates, have been covered in shade. Now remember, the penates are very specific to your family. They are your ancestors. They are not like Jupiter, Juno, Mars, Minerva. They're not the big ones. These are your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, your great great grandparents. Anybody who has gone before you would have been remembered on the lararium, the household shrine. And of course, the more important you were, the bigger the shrine. I equate this very to modern day. If your family has like a wall of pictures that are your family, my mom has an entire upstairs wall. I mean, it must be 10 to 12 feet long, filled floor to ceiling with pictures of our family. And it goes back to my great great grandparents. The oldest pictures I can find are, I don't know. Anyway, everybody's included on that. There's some really awful pictures of me on there. There's a really great one of my brother. It's so bad. Anyway, parents have these pictures. Where the Romans would have kept it just of the ancestors that had passed, of course. But that's how we remember those who have passed. And this, I think, is not uncommon in many cultures to have those pictures. The Romans would have taken wax casts of the dead's face. So as you were laying in repose, they would have taken wax and covered your face with it and then made a mask out of it so that they always had a constant image, an image of your family. Always there, never to be forgotten. Creepy, kind of cool. Okay, so this huge laurel tree, and I think it's important to remember too, the laurel tree was extremely important to Greek mythology. It was sacred to Apollo, and it was given in Roman times. The laurel wreath was given to victors, and even in Greece, it was given to victors of war and to Olympic Games. To win the laurels was to win, you know, we still say today, you've won your laurels. It means that you've achieved the highest or an incredible thing. So the House of Priam not only had the sacred space right in the center, but their household altar was literally out of an ancient laurel tree. This heightens the Greek accomplishment of defeating Priam. Okay, all of that comes into this, and all of that is all of this that's sort of subtly dropping by that. Okay, now that takes that period, and let's do the next couple lines because that was only 3 lines. Here, okay, here, Hecuba and her, let's say daughters, granddaughters, all the women, okay? Nequiquam, in vain, in vain, okay? Circum altaria, which is just another word for altar because he got bored. He used the same word for altar like twice. That's crazy. Okay, so they surround, sir, nope, sir, nope. Let's try S. Surround the altars. Now it's interesting because it's neuter plural. So apparently there's more than one altar here, or maybe there's just a poetic plural. Okay. They surround the altars. Okay, and he's going to compare them here to Columbi. And I don't know if you guys know what Columbi are. We actually get, but anyway, Columbi are doves. Um, so here Hecuba and her daughters in vain surround the altars. Ku introduces a simile. Just like Columbi doves, praecipites condensi, having been having been like thrown together headlong, atra tempesta, in a dark storm, just like doves having been, say, tossed together headlong. There should be a comma there. Having been tossed together headlong in a dark storm. And what he's talking about here is the way that birds will flock together. And if you've ever seen like sparrows, or other small birds like doves, when they or even pigeons, when you get a crowd of them together and like a little kid rushes in, they all go up together and they kind of circle in a big cloud. And that's the image that he's creating here. Doves also a symbol of peace, love, and innocence, very much an innocence thing here. Helplessness. Doves are not capable of attacking. They're not eagles, hawks. They're not, these big birds, predator birds. These are the birds that get eaten by the predator birds. So Hecuba and her daughters absolutely helpless, and that helplessness is what's the word? Exaggerated, built on, whatever, by the dove comparison. So there we go. So here Hecuba and her daughters natai nequiquam in vain circum altaria, around the altars, Keu, just like columbae praecipites condensae, just like doves having been thrown together headlong, atre tempestae, in a dark storm. And, okay, we're going to finish this up. And amplexi, they sit, we'll pick up the sedibon. They were sitting, amplexi, having embraced simulacra, the images, divium, of the gods. And they were sitting, having embraced the images of the gods. Okay. The only thing here is to let you know that we is actually we orum again. Okay, so they just ellipse the or out because it doesn't scan. So it is a genitive plural from diviorum, but it's just divium, much like you never see Danaorum, you only see Danaum. This is Divium. You never see Diviorum. You just see Divium. And again, it just has to come down with scansion. The Greeks, or not the Greeks, the Romans would have known that, so they didn't worry about it. Okay, so that takes you from 512 to 1617 to 517. All right, so that was 512 to 17. Look at that, 5 whole lines. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this now, and then I'm going to end everything.